Hello everyone. Today I'm going to do a little bit of social commentary once again, and this I think is a very important topic that seems to be overlooked in the traditionalist circles. So we're going to go over a couple of things, a couple of philosophies or ideologies that we've seen prop up in the past, and then I'll go over what's been going on in the world in relation to this and how we might be able to fix things. Now, I would have called this video The Death of Nobility and the Rise of Cosmopolitanism, but I figured that title was a bit too long, and I like to make my titles nice and short. But that's what we're going to be talking about. The death of natural-born aristocracies, if you want to use that word, and the rise of industrial cosmopolitanism. Now, what is cosmopolitanism? Is it just a group of people? Is it a way of acting or thinking? Let's find out. So cosmopolitanism, as I understand it, as with many social ills that we have today, comes out of the Enlightenment period in the 18th century, and you'd be surprised to find out that one of its proponents was Immanuel Kant. So yes, this is a liberal Enlightenment philosophy, and it's also a moral universalist ideology as well, where people are more concerned with the individual and individuals on a global scale rather than the nation state, or a particular group of people. A lot of Enlightenment thinkers during the time moved away from religion and into secularism and rationalism, and a lot of them had these thoughts of an ever-expanding global ideology and moral universals. Now, as much as I like Kant and many of his writings and his categorical imperative, I disagree with his cosmopolitanism, as ultimately I think it has given rise to a lot of social ills, one that we'll talk about right now. But let me briefly talk about nobility and what this really means. You could use the term aristocracy. I believe the two are interchangeable. When I think of aristocracy or aristocrats, I think more of the transitional period between classical nobility, aristocracy, aristocrats, and eventually the rise of the industrial cosmopolitan. In the beginning of human civilization, we saw a rise in what I've always termed the natural nobility or natural aristocracy. And these are the families that, through the natural forces of the world, evolution and natural selection, have ended up on top of the side of society naturally. Those who were the strongest or the smartest, or those who could gather the most resources. This is how kingship was created. To be a noble was to be born into this class. You had traits because of your genealogy that other families and groups did not have, and you were a part of a special, naturally occurring group of people that were, in many respects, better than the ones beneath them. And I only really mean this on, or in the evolutionary sense, not in any type of classist or supremacist way. And this natural aristocracy continued to exist for a long time until the rise of the industrial society, in which more emphasis was placed on the collection of capital, which is where capitalism comes from, as a status symbol, because any regular person could earn a large sum of money if they put in a lot of time and preparation and had a little bit of luck thrown in there. They could become a part of this new industrial aristocracy. But there was also a shift in social views and the philosophy of the late 19th, early 20th century that led to the rise of a specific group of people. This is the urbanite, the urban cosmopolitan, the industrial cosmopolitan. We know these people today as the hoity-toity inner-city liberals in their gated communities. You may also find the term globalist used quite frequently because the ideology of cosmopolitanism puts more emphasis on the global nation, let's say, of humanity as a whole rather than individual groups of people. Now, obviously, if you watched any of my content previously, you know that I put more emphasis on the nation state and on groups of people rather than globalism for a number of reasons. But the biggest issue here is that this group of industrial cosmopolitans do not profess or uphold the classical institutions or virtues of the nobility, which is a part of this grand tapestry of society in which all classes of people work together with one another rather than thinking in terms of exploitation by one group or another. This, of course, is one of the reasons why societies in the past, outside of warfare, could remain stable for long periods of time, decades and decades and decades, without seeing any substantial shift in culture, religion, or language. Again, outside any time periods of war or conflict or anything like that, you did see a long period of stability and unity in a nation. And because we have this globalized, industrial, cosmopolitan class, a lot of the focus is on the world around us rather than in our own nations. And this is a problem because we have a serious amount of issues, a large amount of social ills in our own countries that are not going to be solved by giving money to outsiders. And although it's not always true, of course, there's a large variety in humans, the classical nobility were virtuous and pious. They were patrons of beautiful art and architecture. They were loyal to what we would call now the nation state, to their king, to their kingdom. We used to have a class of people that were worth looking up to. In a sense, it is the natural drive for humans to worship heroes of sorts. Now, you take that classical image and you look at who most people look up to as their heroes today, and it's usually some kind of celebrity or modern-day democratic politician or some kind of sports player. If you're lucky, someone might say that their hero is perhaps their parents. But the problem is most of these people are not virtuous. They're not pious. They're not patrons of beautiful art and architecture. They're not loyal to their nation or their people. Many of them just happen to be very wealthy. Many of them just so happen to be gifted at a particular activity, a sport or something like that. One of the things that held classical society together was this virtuous nobility, because whether you want to believe it or not, social behavior, morality, institutions like this used to come from the top down. It used to be from the very best of society that would emulate or act in a specific way that was very good for the health of the nation. And because these people were worth looking up to, the underclasses would do so. Now, you might think that I'm crazy and your Marxist education would have told you otherwise, that the past, feudalism, all of these things were horrendous and that the underclasses were oppressed and that they hated the upper class and there was class warfare constantly. This, of course, is all a lie. Society used to function much better when there was hierarchy and everybody knew their place in society. This was a time when people not only had spiritual health and unity amongst a group of people, but they had a set of heroes, let's say, that they could look up to and learn from. If you don't believe me, look at the effectiveness of populism or the worship of celebrities. This type of human behavior has always existed and will always exist. In fact, it's getting much worse, wherein people cannot even think the most basic thoughts by themselves. They are being conditioned to be programmed to follow absolutely, to be guided by any person that's paraded around in front of them by the media and by Hollywood. People who are not virtuous, who are not pious. People who, frankly, I look down upon because of their actions, because of their behavior, because of the way that they hold themselves. I see it as beneath me. Now, one of the most important things we can do is strive for the reintroduction of hierarchy into our society. And no, I don't mean left-wing hierarchy in which there is one group of global elites ruling over 7 billion unwashed masses. No, true hierarchy in which everybody can find and work within their own abilities and capabilities. A time and place in which people are happy to be a cog in the machine, so to speak, because that is their place. And if we do this, and if we manage to take control of our culture once again and return it to traditional values, we will see a rise in the natural aristocracy. And because of this, I think that it may be possible to return to traditional forms of governance, such as a monarchy, if and when this natural aristocracy returns to us. As much as I agree with the neo-reactionaries, it is not feasible to introduce this classical form of governance yet because there are so many social ills. Too many people who are respected simply because of their ability to collect green pieces of paper. And if you're curious about more of my thoughts on monarchism, I did a stream about it. It's called Monarchism and the Scandinavian Invasion. It was a wonderful stream with many people from the Discord, so go and check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. With that being said, thanks for watching.